This is why it can be so helpful just to have this information for you. Stop guessing, stop wondering. The other fantastic thing about a genetic test is that you only take it once. So the sooner you take it, the more value you're going to get out of it. I wish I would have taken this test when I was 20 years old, 18 years old enough to sort of understand and want to take care of my health better. I wish I would have taken it before I got pregnant ever. I wish I would have known this information more earlier in my life. It would have saved me so much frustration, stress, and wasted energy on things that weren't going to give me the right result. Not because I wasn't trying, but because I was putting all my energy and effort in a direction that wasn't the right thing. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. It is not my fault. I inherited it from my mother, okay? I'm Dr. Beth Westy. Welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast. We are going to dive into all things genetic and talking about if you really inherited this, what does this mean? And then talk about genetic testing. Is this really worth it? Is it valuable to get? What do I need to know? And how is this going to really highlight my health? Does it really matter? You're going to hear things all over the place on the internet talking about it's genetics, it's epigenetics, which means it's more your environment, your lifestyle than just your genetics. And which one matters more? Yes is the answer. Yes is the answer, essentially. Honestly, to be totally frank, if you do not know your genetic profile, you can guess. You can be stuck wondering, is this part of the reason why I'm struggling? Or why do I have such a hard time with this or that? Or you can think, I have this genetic trait because look at my family members. And really, you don't. Here's the quick and dirty. Here's the little bit about genetics that all you need to know. Your genetics are what you inherit, but it doesn't mean that that's what comes through all the time. Right now, we're talking about different health issues overall. Genetics loads the gun. Your environment and lifestyle pulls the trigger. Now, sometimes that environment and lifestyle is within your control. Sometimes it is absolutely something that you can take charge of and change. Sometimes it's not, meaning sometimes there are just stressors or life or whatnot or traumas or events that happen that you did not know were present there. I'll give you a for instance. I'll give you a couple of real life examples. I always talk about this. I will always use myself as an example, just as a real person. These are actual real things and events and stuff. When I talk about pregnancy and the stress and strain that it can have on your body. Oh, pregnancy does all these wonderful things. It can reset your hormones. It can really help with growth levels and repair, and your body can rejuvenate. Sure, great, yes, but it can also be very stressful, taxing, all this other stuff. Also really important to note, what is the mother's lifestyle at that time as well? So, real life example right here. This is what we're going to do. I was 24 when I got pregnant the first time with my son. We were not married. Ruh-roh. I know. We'd been together for 3 years. We were engaged. Okay. We got married the next year, or we got married 2 years later. I wanted to make sure I made it through the pregnancy and birth and everything and all that stuff, right? And then get life underway, and then we got married. It was a lot. It was a lot. It really was. It was really hard because not only were we young, I was in graduate school. My husband was working, or he did not necessarily have a solid career path. So I was working part-time and going to school full-time. He was working a full-time job and another part-time job, and then switched a career path to, work in masonry and construction to support us. That was really hard, right? That was hard. That alone is hard. Then the other thing is that we did not have support from families, right? I had more-ish support, we'll say, from my family. My mother was very disappointed I wasn't getting married, so that was very stressful. His family was really not supportive. And what I'm not saying that what I'm not saying, and that I will just come out and say, is that they wanted me to not have the baby. Flat out. It was heartbreaking. It wasn't just, oh, they're not supportive. It was heartbreaking. And it was really freaking tough. What does this have to do with genetics? I'm getting there. Going through a pregnancy that's stressful. I had other issues pop up. I broke out in hives. I did all these things to take care of myself. I took prenatal vitamins. I took fish oils. I took vitamin D. I took all these supplements. I was in graduate school, so I got supplements at a big discount from the school store. I got adjusted. I got acupuncture regularly for nausea and everything else. I went to all my prenatal appointments. I followed all the recommendations. I did everything to take care of myself as well as I could at that point, right? It was a lot of other life things. Everything that was in my control, I did to have a healthy pregnancy. But the stress factor was so much there that, again, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I was 24, then 25 years old when he was born. It was tough. And then after he was born, I did not know that there were thyroid and autoimmune issues running in the family that impacted me getting postpartum thyroiditis. That's the thing that I want to talk about. Postpartum thyroiditis. I had such a rough time and was so stressed during pregnancy and then had a traumatic birth. And with everything that happened and everything that went on and what my body went through, of course I had thyroid issues, right? Of course I had thyroid issues after that. Now I was able to, 6 years later, worked with Ayurveda and other natural healing techniques to reverse that. And I'm not on thyroid medication anymore, but I had to be on thyroid medication because of what happened to my thyroid from pregnancy and birth and everything. That is the life aspect of it. That trigger, right, got pulled because of all of that life stuff. Now, genetically, right, my mom on her side of the family, so when I said I inherited it from, thanks, Mom, right? Not quite necessarily, right? It wasn't my mom's side of the family. It was my dad's side of the family. Now, my mom's side of the family, no one had thyroid issues. No one had, that wasn't a thing. My mom called around and asked. My mom went so far then because she was wondering, where did I get this from? How did I end up with such a strange issue? She's like, no one in the family has that. Oh, let me call, because my dad, and just quick family history, my dad only has one brother who's now passed away. But other than that, my grandmother and grandfather on that side, we're not in touch with a lot of that side of the family. I don't know them as much. So my mom called her mother-in-law's, my grandma's sister or something. And she ended up asking her and then got 3 other people's phone numbers tracked down. Hey, who can I talk to? Who can I find this out from? Does anybody have a thyroid issue? And lo and behold, she found out, oh my gosh, yes, there are thyroid issues on that side of the family. Interesting. So of course that got triggered because that's young, right? 25, and to have bad thyroid issues. Why? Genetics, my friends, genetics. This is where it comes from. Now, super funny. I have done genetic profiles on both my parents, and I, of course, always thought that I genetically was more like my mom. Me and my 2 sisters, and then my 5 girl cousins on that side, their children that are girls, all this stuff. We all look alike. We all sound alike. There are literally, this has happened before where my husband has called, and if my sister picks up the phone, we sound very similar. He's thought it was me before, right? And it's her. We look alike, we sound alike, all this other stuff. So I just kind of thought, I have taken genetics classes. I know, right, logically know this information. I literally just assumed that my health would follow the pattern of my mother's side of the family because that's who I look like. When I looked at my genetic panel, my dad's side of the family. Do you need to go through these hoops and get your parents genetically tested and all these other things or whatever? No, you don't have to. Of course not, right? But this is where it can be really helpful to get this type of genetic testing to understand what your body needs and preemptively think about things. And then also think about events that have happened in your life and in your health and say, you know what? This is why I see this. This is why. This is where this came from. This didn't come out of nowhere. I'm not crazy for thinking like this. I'm not insane for whatever, right? I see how this happened. This is and for me, it's from my dad's side of the family. So there are certain things where I'm like, okay, if I knew then what I know now, I would have handled a lot of things very differently. Very differently. And that's the benefit of knowing your genetics. To be able to then preemptively control even more of what you can or shift and change things just to potentially prevent issues from coming up. That ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure, right? So that's what the benefit is of genetic testing and knowing and understanding it. And not guessing. Because I'm saying this because it happened to me. It happened to me where I would have sworn up and down that these issues that I would have had would have followed my mother's side of the family. Nope. My genetics show it follows my father's side of the family. And I'll be totally honest, besides my father and his brother, and he never had kids. Him and his wife never had kids. So there's no other cousins on that side that I could be close with, and any other family, they're just not close or connected, I'll say. So I don't know. So it's a big question mark. So how do you find out? Again, genetic testing. You don't need to track down people and their medical history. You can just do a genetic test on yourself and figure out, what do you need? What things are big markers for you specifically? Yep. So I'm going to share and show here, if you are watching this, a real sample of what a genetic test would look like here. And I use 3x4 genetics. There are other genetic tests out there. I do not like them. No, I do not, because they will not show a really complete view of what this information does. They don't explain it very well. And I do not trust the confidentiality of a lot of those other places. I'll say it like that. 3x4 Genetics is a very safe and secure company. They destroy your samples after they're done with it. They do not share your information at all whatsoever. And they put everything together in this lovely PDF that you can look at and glean a lot of information from. But when you order a test through us, we go through it with you and talk to you about it. This is a sample, a sample report. They go through and explain high impact versus low impact, all of those things, what's important, what's not important, all that stuff. And then they get to the top 3 things that are important for your overall processing. The first one that's listed here is methylation. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about with methylation is the importance of understanding if you are a good methylator or not. I'll let you know I'm not a good methylator. So for someone who has also had PCOS issues, autoimmune issues, fatigue, brain fog, all these other things, or realizing that when I get stressed, how that can impact my health worse than other people, like comparing me and my husband, we live in the same household. We are exposed to the same things most of the time, right? We eat the same, very similar-ish healthy foods all the time. Why is it when I don't sleep or get stressed, it impacts my body physically way differently than his? Methylation. That's the answer. It's methylation. Not being a good methylator is really, really, really vital to know and understand. The other saying, because I had mentioned this, right? Genetics loads the gun. Your environment and lifestyle is what pulls the trigger. Methylation turns off the safety. Really? Yes. So when we look at this, methylation is the process of repairing, making new DNA, making sure every cell is functioning optimally. Right? It's how we repair DNA, how we make energy, respond to stress, handle inflammation, how well our cells detoxify, how our brain chemistry works. Right? It's so vital and important to know this. So if nothing else, if you were like, what's one piece of genetic information that would help me in my health journey, it would be knowing if you are a good methylator or not. Honestly. Are you a good methylator? Are you a bad methylator? Knowing that is so, so helpful, because then you can constantly make sure that you are layering in things that are going to help your system methylate better. And if you ever feel garbage, crappy, junky, whatever, out of touch with your body, methylate, right? How do I methylate? What do I do? What do I focus on? I'm so glad you asked. These are the things that are found in this test. These are the things that are found in the 3-4 genetic test, the 3x4 genetics, that focuses on, they have food, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations. So food, I'll read some of these off. Foods high in B complex vitamins, magnesium, and choline. So raw, leafy, cruciferous veggies, avocados, citrus fruits, legumes, poultry, eggs, nuts, and seeds. Yes. Quality proteins with essential building blocks for methylation, foods rich in vitamin B12, methionine, choline, wild caught fish, organic poultry, grass-fed meats, wild game, garbanzo beans, and edamame. Lifestyle things, ensure daily mindfulness, yoga, meditation to reduce stress hormones that may overload the methylation cycle. That's why stress is so essential, to understand to moderate your stress levels when you are not a good methylator. If you are too stressed, it will overload your methylation cycle, which means literally everything else, every other function in your body, down regulates. It doesn't function as well. It's not as strong. Your muscle tissue, even if you go work out and lift weights and do protein and creatine and all these other things, your muscle tissue isn't going to repair as well as it could or should, because you're stressed, and then you're not going to methylate as well. Managing your stress levels when you're not a good methylator is a daily must. But how would you know that you would need to focus on this as much and add this into your daily routine? Genetic testing. It helps you prioritize. It helps you shift and change this. I have gone through, no lie, I have gone through genetic testing with women, talked about what they have, what their blueprint is. Like, listen, man, like, you didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault, right? And this isn't a death sentence by any means, but just to know and understand, for you to live your healthiest, best functioning life, to be your best self, you would need to incorporate these lifestyle things regularly, which means if you have a job that is very high stress, you need to have an outside life, your life outside of your job be very low stress. That's not a cycle that you can continue. But I have had women change their jobs because of the stress, because they realized, I'm not going to win this battle. I'm done trying. Yeah. Do what's best for you. Live the life that's right for you. Not trying to make yourself methylate if you're too stressed. Actively limit exposure to substances that overload the methylation cycle, including medications. We sometimes we talk about that specifically with each person. Alcohol and endocrine disruptors. So this is one of the other things that can be really tough. If you are not a good methylator, you should really limit or limit alcohol from your life. And if you do indulge, you would need to have certain things that you add back in around that so that you can process it out of your system, because it's going to make it harder. Yeah. And then they talk about toxins and plastics and lots of stuff, right? Okay. So that's a methylation thing. That's just one thing, right? They also list here glucose and insulin, memory and brain health. Again, this is just that you're more susceptible, not that you have it, but that it can get triggered. And those are the top 3 things. They have a list of all the genetic SNPs here then next on this test. 2 whole pages of it. Most people don't pay attention to this, right? It's all just weird letters crammed together that you're like, I don't know what that means. Yep. But then the easiest thing to look at is the pathway-based results page. This lets me know at a quick glance at what you would do well and what you would naturally struggle with if these get turned on. So this example, the methylation, inflammation, and oxidative stress right away. Oh, yeah. So that's going to impact a lot of how your cells and your system functions. Those would be things we'd want to support right away. The next category of systems, glucose and insulin, so blood sugar regulation, memory and brain health, we'd want to support that for a lifetime. Bone health, mood and behavior, and then hormone balance. Sometimes people wonder, gosh, I have had, problems with fertility and endometriosis and things like that. And my mom had endometriosis and my mom had a hysterectomy early and so did my aunt and this and this and this. And am I going to be doomed for this? And why is this so hard for me? And then we do a genetic test and I'm like, yeah, look, hormone balance, right? Which again, I see a lot of that. I'll be honest. A lot of the genetic tests that I do, I see a lot of hormone, of course, right? That's what I work with, right? So I'm working with a subgroup of women that have hormonal issues, so it's every now and then, someone doesn't have that as part of their genetic profile, but just more often than not, they do, just because that's a subgroup of women that I work with. But this is something then that it's genetic. Again, it doesn't mean that you would always have to have a struggle with this. Besides getting your body functioning differently, improving your pathways, making sure we're supporting your system with the right nutrients on a regular basis. And again, they list it here, the right exercise recommendations, making sure you're managing stress. It will tell you how to prioritize sleep and everything, but then we want to support that hormonal imbalance. And again, one of my favorite ways to do that is with these tinctures. It's with these tinctures. Now, again, this is a quick summary of this profile here. I love this. I absolutely love it because it's so vital and so essential to be able to look at your specific genetics and go back to it again and again and again. I took my genetic test 4 or 5 years ago or so, and I still will go back and read things and be like, oh my gosh, that's right. Yes. Because as I go through even my own health journey and what I am working on for me, right? I have my own process for mold and, I got bit by that brown recluse spider, or if I go through different phases where I'm like, I'm really trying to work on better sleep, or I'm really trying to build more muscle right now, or I'm really trying to XYZ. What does my genetic test say about this again that I can really use to my advantage? Use this knowledge to my advantage. Yeah. But when we talk about that hormone balance, literally one of the best ways to help your system out on a daily basis, on the regular, without having to worry about how much stress you're under or whether or not you hit your protein goal for the day, is these tinctures right here, the estro balance and the progestero balance. Days 1 through 14 of the cycle, you would get in that estro balance, right? Just 1 milliliter, which is about 20 drops, which on the dropper bottle, it only goes up to about there, like halfway up this whole dropper bottle. It's not the whole dropper bottle, right? I'll put that down. It's not the whole one. I don't know if you can see this. It's not the whole thing, but it comes up to about halfway. That's about 1 milliliter under your tongue. Let it sit and then you swallow. And that's it. These herbs and by switching back and forth, we're following a seed cycling pattern, and these herbs will help your system produce and regulate the amount of estrogen progesterone made. I have seen on Dutch reports, on labs, the improvement of both estrogen and progesterone, overall levels, overall processing from just adding in these tinctures. That's the best way to do it. Stop struggling with things and stop wondering. Stop thinking, good Lord, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I get ahead of this? Why do I always struggle with fat loss? Why do I always struggle with whatever? Why do I always seem to be low in vitamin D? Is that something that's on this genetic test? Yes. Yeah. It will give you the baseline of things to just make sure that your bases are covered. What nutrients are you going to need to focus on for you? That. Right? That's what's so essential and important. Now, if you've made it this far in the podcast, let me see if I can even show you my genetic report. This is my genetic profile. For real. For-roll. All those things. Now look at this. Inflammation, methylation, memory and brain health. And I'll be totally honest, when I first saw this, I was like, what? On my mother's side, my mother's side, my grandmother lived to be 98 years old. Sharp as a tack until like the year before she died. Would remember everything, remember people's birthdays, everybody's, right? I was like, there's no way that's right. Knowing what I know now, that I'm actually more like my dad's side of the family. Yup. Yup. So look at that. My top 2 things that I have to battle with are the inflammation, methylation. And then what's also interesting is memory, brain health, mood, behavior, bone health, and then histamine overload. Histamine overload was also really helpful. Remember I mentioned that I broke out in hives during my pregnancy? There it is. There it is. Yeah, histamine overload, stress response, right? And then vitamin B12 and vitamin D, all the, like, if nothing else, when I'm ever like, oh God, I don't want to take another supplement. Ugh, I just feel so, ugh. I don't want to take all my capsules today. What's my bare minimum of supplements? My bare minimum of supplements are vitamin B12 and vitamin D. Right there. Yep. This is why it can be so helpful just to have this information for you. Stop guessing. Stop wondering. The other fantastic thing about a genetic test is that you only take it once. So the sooner you take it, the more value you're going to get out of it. I wish I would have taken this test when I was 20 years old, 18 years old enough to sort of understand and want to take care of my health better. I wish I would have taken it before I got pregnant ever. I wish I would have known this information more earlier in my life. It would have saved me so much frustration, stress, and wasted energy on things that weren't going to give me the right result. Not because I wasn't trying, but because I was putting all my energy and effort in a direction that wasn't the right thing. Right? From my report here, I just showed you my detox pathways. I mean, they're medium, so they're not fantastic, but they're not terrible. So when people talk about, oh, do a detox. Do I really need to focus a ton on just detox? No, it's methylation and then my inflammatory response. If I focus on those 2 things, my body feels way different than just doing, oh, I've done this detox and I did that detox. Okay, right? I notice a huge difference in how my body feels and how it responds. It's not in my head, right? It won't be in your head when you start to focus on the right thing. Every single person without fail that I go through their genetic report, we set them on a path and really well-rounded, include all these things. Without a doubt, 6 months later, they say, wow, do I feel the best I have felt. And not only being on that path, but knowing that moving forward the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years of your life, you are going to have the key, the blueprint for what you would need to do to keep healthy. So again, this test is the best test to get. It is the most clarifying, and the sooner you get it, the more value it brings to you. So that is what I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening to my rant on genetic testing and why I love it and why I think it's so important. But I really believe that if you're not going to get any other test for your health, get a genetic test and do it with a company that you know your information is safe with. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys later. Oh, as always, you can always get all the information below this episode in the links. Learn more, but don't hesitate to reach out. That's what I'm here for. If you want to reach out, or even if you want to send a message like, hey, you said you had hives during pregnancy. I had hives, but I also had this other weird thing. Let me know. I love this stuff. Or if you're like, hey, my mom has this, but my dad has this, and I have this other thing. How is that possible genetically, or this or this? Let me know. I'm more than happy to answer questions and everything else. But again, a great place to start is just clicking on the link and getting a test for yourself. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.